Hey y'all. Good good evening. I hope everybody's Tuesday. Today is Tuesday, right? Hope everybody's Tuesday is going well. Hello, hello.
Hello, how are you?
I'm good. I'm good. Um Trying to see if we would get anybody to pop in here before I went through my introduction. Um So we'll go ahead and get this party started. Good evening, everybody. It's me, Adelia. And today, as we talk about all things money and travel and pandemic travel, all of that, I have with me Danielle. Are we Danielle Desir or are we Danielle Corbett?
That is like the most frequently asked question I get, like legit. It is Danielle Desir for business purposes. It's just
Okay.
a long process of changing my last name, and I built my business off of this last name. So he
Okay.
gets it. He gets it.
Okay. Well, no, I am big about trying to call folks what they want to be called. So I have tried to be very careful about names. Danielle is the host of the Thought Card podcast and the author of 5 books on travel and finance and all of that good stuff. So I thought that you would be the perfect person to come and answer some questions and chat a little bit about travel, affordable travel, as well as travel during the pandemic, because you did a little traveling during the pandemic.
I did a little. I dabbled in local travel. Yes, I did. I did.
Okay, well, let me ask, because I was not in the US at the time, but we'll say that like the pandemic started in the US, what, like mid-March?
I would say so. I would say so. I was already working from home early March. So I would say mid-March sounds good. Yeah.
Okay, so the pandemic starts mid-March 2020. When did you take your first pandemic trip?
Not until August. So what is that? 5 months, 6 months. Yeah, it was August. We felt comfortable that we wanted to try it out. And we went to Vermont, which is about a 3.5 to 4 hour drive from our place here. We didn't want to stop at like have a rest. So we wanted to be able to just do one shot. And that was like the perfect destination for us to go to.
Okay, and what other trips did you take?
Yeah, so we actually did a couple more trips to Vermont. We had one trip to Bennington. Like these are actually places that I never heard of before, but I was here for it. I was ready to go out and explore. And I also went to Killington, Vermont, and then I had another trip to Hunter Mountain, New York. So all of these trips are within like 4 or 5 hours from my home. I could just easily drive in one sitting and not have to stop anywhere.
Okay, and what did y'all do in Vermont? Like, I know where Vermont is. I
Yes.
know that I think syrup is a big deal there, but outside
Mhm.
of that, I don't know anything about Vermont.
Yes. So, one of the things that I discovered through the pandemic is that before the pandemic, we were really going to places that had like a lot of things to do, that had just the tourist attractions, right? We were looking at the top list of things to do at destination. But when you are now trying to avoid people, you're doing the opposite of that. So we were wanting to go to Lake Placid, which is a very popular place in New York, upstate New York, but it was a little bit too expensive. So we were like, you know what? Let's broaden the search and let's look at Airbnb and just find a place that we really liked. So when we found an Airbnb, it was in Bennington, Vermont. We hadn't heard of it, but it was exactly what we were looking for. Comfortable, cozy in the cabin in the woods, secluded. So that was a shift in my mindset. I was like, you know what? I'm going to now look for a cozy destination. Like the accommodation has to be cozy and what we're looking for. And then I'll figure out things to do in that area. So that is how I'm traveling right now. I'm first finding the accommodation that's cozy, that's perfect for me. And then I'll find things to do, which is completely different from pre-pandemic travel.
Well, no, I have had to shift because I typically will stay in hostels. And I can't bring myself to do that because I don't want to be near other people. That's like my whole mindset as the little bit of traveling that I have done in, I guess it was in December. I took 2 trips or 1 2-week trip here in Mexico. And that was my mindset was, how can I be around the least number of people? So it was like, okay, I can't stay at hostels. What can I do where, you know, I don't have to interact with other people as far as accommodations and that sort of thing. And as I chose activities, very much, I was thinking like, what are most people going to want to do? And then try and do the opposite of that.
Exactly. Exactly.
Okay. Now, how did you feel on these trips? Because you went to Vermont, you went to, is that upstate New York?
Yep.
Because
Yep.
I don't know much about New York geography either.
It's okay.
Okay, so how did you feel mentally traveling during the pandemic?
I would say my first trip, it was nerve-wracking because I had only had experience going to my grocery store and coming back home. So I was just really nervous as to how are people going to be like, and I'm from out of state, and it was just a lot of thoughts and emotions. But I realized that once I got there, I was starting to see, get into the swing of things. I saw how people were operating. It felt comforting to me. And even to this day, it still feels comforting to me to have a mask on. So it is in Vermont, it is like a mandated. So everyone is wearing their mask. So that made me feel, okay, everyone is taking this seriously and we're trying our best not to be too close to each other. So I felt really, really good. And that is what spurred me to take the other trips, the 2 other trips, is because I felt comfortable and I had done a lot of research to get to that point. It was hard because I was feeling FOMO. I was like, oh, I'm a traveler. Like I should be going out there. And I was like, no, 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 no. You have to take it step by step. And when you're ready to travel again, you take the steps to make it happen. I'm definitely not the kind of person right now to be like, go out there and travel the world unless you want to. But there's a lot of research involved because in the States, primarily every single state has different regulations and rules. So there may be fines in one state, no fines in another state. You may have to quarantine, you may have to show results. So every state is different. So that is a layer that is more complex than again, before we traveled before the pandemic.
I'm you didn't come across many non-Americans during your travels, I'm going to guess, because now that I asked that question and I think about it, I believe there is some kind of travel ban in the US for people coming from outside. And see, my experience was actually the opposite because Mexico has been sort of like, sure, y'all can come. You don't need to take a test. Come on. I found that there were lots of European travelers, and the minute we got somewhere, they were ready to take off their mask. And it increased my anxiety ridiculously because I was like, basically, I'm in this alone. None of these people give a damn about because I went to Chiapas, which in Mexico, we have a stoplight system. So each of the 32 states in the city of Mexico, if you are on red, that's like you should be in lockdown. Green is 100% open. So Chiapas is the only place that Chiapas and Campeche were the only places that had been green and had been 100% open. So that's where I went. But I think a lot of people confused open with COVID free. And so I found that I was very much in the minority as somebody actually wearing a mask. And I just thought, like, you don't know where these people came from. who flew in from where, and y'all are just being way too casual. And by the time I left, my anxiety was ratcheted way up, because I was like, basically, I'm out here on my own, and I'm having to duck and dodge folks. So yeah, that's, and I imagine if I had just been dealing with locals, it probably would not have been that bad. Now, you mentioned research. Where do you go? Because it seems very overwhelming to have to think about, what are the restrictions in all these different places?
Yeah. So this is exactly why I wrote a book about this. So my book is called Planning Local Trips During a Pandemic, because there is a lot more than I ever thought. One of the first places that I would start would actually be your 9 to 5 job. So if you have a 9 to 5 job, there may be a list of destinations or states or countries that you are not allowed to go to. Or if you do go, it's at your own risk. And plus, they may not pay you when you come back, right?
Ooh.
So there is a compensation risk as well. So that was like number one. That's the first place I go to, is I look at my job travel restrictions, if there's any place on the list that they're recommending me not to go or that could affect my pay. Secondly, after that, then I look at, okay, based off of those destinations that I can go to, I look to see what are the current quarantine rules or current rules for travelers, out-of-state travelers. And then based on that, I try to do like a very short list. And a lot of times, like if for Vermont, it may be that you may have to quarantine for 14 days, or in the summertime, there was actually no rule like that. It was just like get a COVID test, which was a lot easier. So definitely looking at the state's tourism board website is a really good place to see what's happening in the destination. What are they promoting? A lot of these destinations right now are promoting like outdoor adventures and just social distance activities, and they will have some travel guidelines and travel restrictions. I take it also one step further. I go on the CDC website, and once I've nailed down the county I'm going to, I do look at the CDC website to see what the trend is. Is there like a huge outbreak, or is it trending like really, really low? So back in the summertime, Vermont had some of the lowest cases in the entire country. So that made me feel a lot more confident to go. But again, I did a little bit of research before I went. So again, there's a couple of things that you have to look at. Your job, if there's restrictions, go to the CDC website to see what's happening in that state. Go to the state's Department of Transportation or Tourism Board and see what's going on. And you'll start to, again, piece together your strategy for going out of town.
Okay.
It's a lot.
No, it is a lot, because I'm just in my brain, I'm thinking about, this is so different than the way we used to travel before March of 2020.
Yes.
So different. Were there any mishaps, you would say?
Okay. Yeah, there were some mishaps. The one thing that I noticed is that Google right now is not the best place for information. And this is what I'm trying to let travelers know, is that things have changed. Google is outdated. As a travel blogger, I have blog posts on my website that have been ranking #1, and I have not been to Iceland in like 4 years. And I'm still ranking #1 because it's just things are moving so fast. So the best thing that you can do is to tap into your local network. So if you have local friends or people that you know in the area, they're going to know the best things to do, during the pandemic. They're going to know what's open and what's not, because Google will make you waste a lot of time. So when I went to Vermont, I would be looking at restaurants to like call and see if I could get takeout or delivery. And it would say open on Google.
But no,
it's not. So we would drive there, or we would spend the time looking at the menu, picking out the delicious dish, and we wasted 20 minutes because they're closed. So I would say, when you're thinking about pandemic travel, you want to have a general idea of what you want to do. Like, I'm not super committed to like what I'm going to do when I'm at the destination. I don't even research restaurants because it's a waste of time.
It
because
is.
it may be open today and then you get there 2 weeks later and it's closed. So the best thing you can do is you could plan out your outdoor activities. That's a good start. But for restaurants, literally when you get there at your destination, I would say when you see a restaurant you want to check out, call them first. Hey, are you open? Hey, do you have a mandate? Are there masks required? Like whatever you feel like is important to ask for you, ask those questions, and then you go ahead and place your order. Because if not, you're going to waste a lot of time, a lot of resources just trying to figure things out because things are moving so fast.
I thought that was just an issue here in Mexico. I didn't realize that was everywhere. We made a quick day trip to Puebla and got there, and everything we wanted to see was closed. But Google said it was wide open.
Yeah.
Over and over, we had that issue. Did you buy or get any kind of like special gear? Like how prepared were you for like sanitizing and all of that?
Yeah. So that actually brings me back to like your accommodation style, right? So there's a big debate right now. Should you be staying at an Airbnb or hotel? But regardless of whichever ones you choose, I recommend to pack your stuff. You need to be self-sufficient because you cannot depend on your accommodation to provide you with sanitation wipes because that may or may not happen. So we packed hand sanitizers, we packed Lysol, we packed gloves, water, snacks, food, as much as possible so we didn't have to interact with others and we can still keep our spaces clean. So for us, we prefer to travel via Airbnb because of the more secluded remote destinations. It's just, we usually rent out our entire place. So it's just us. And I have this routine where I come in and I make sure the windows are open. I have my mask on still, open all the windows, let the air ventilate. And then I start wiping stuff down, wipe it down, wipe it down, wipe it down. Even the remote control, the switches, all of the touch points is important. And that has been what has worked for me, just trying to be as self-sufficient as possible so I'm not having to depend or have to go out and run to the store. I don't want to do that when I'm traveling. Yeah.
I've seen some people even talk about like they're bringing their own sheets. And I'm kind of like, that's enough to make me want to stay home. Because if I got to do all that, because I like to travel very, very light. So if I got to do all that, I may just stay home, which is why I have not been anywhere since New Year's. And I was contemplating traveling at the end of March for my birthday. And then I realized that backs up to a major 2-week holiday in Latin America for our Holy Week. Basically, everybody gets off work. And after being on lockdown for 2 months,
they're ready to go.
Imagine they're all going to want to go somewhere. And I'm like, okay, then that means I can't go anywhere. So,
yeah,
the pandemic is cramping my style. Definitely. Does anybody have any questions specifically about traveling during a pandemic or the pandemic? Hopefully there's not another one. I think back to where my mind was because I was living in China this time last year. So, like I thought, oh, we'll deal with it in Asia, but the rest of the world, they'll be okay. And then mid-March came and I was like, damn it, y'all had a 2-month lead and you bungled it. And here we are a year later and we're still looking at probably another year. I know nobody wants to say that, but I think that's a conservative estimate that we're looking at another year of this.
Yeah.
But
wait, what did I see you? I saw you in London in January.
Yes,
right? Were you on vacation?
I was on vacation from China.
Okay, I see. And then literally we all got home and then it's just like, that's a wrap.
Because that was at the beginning of my trip. At the end of January, I was in Ukraine. I was coming back from Chernobyl and I get a text that tells me my flight has been canceled. My flight that's like in 2 weeks. And I was like, that's when it started to click to me, like, oh, this might like impact my life more than I thought. And yeah.
It's funny because I guess I've been always hyper aware about the pandemic because I was literally in Wuhan, China in December. I had planned a 10-day trip to China in December, which I had bought and secured like the year before. So when word came out around February that we were, that the pandemic was happening, me and my husband looked at each other. We were like, "Are we good?" Because we literally just came back from here, which is crazy. Which is so crazy. It's just so crazy to just imagine that. But they say that the pandemic has been around since like October, November of
Quite
2019,
possibly.
which is crazy. So.
Yeah, and it turns out I didn't know it at the time, but apparently I lived about 2 hours away from Wuhan. I had no clue because people, when I was on my way to London, several friends sent me like news links and were like, "Hey, I don't know if this is where you are in China, but be careful." And I was like, whatever. I'm on my way to Europe. I was like, I don't even know where Wuhan is. Little did I know. That trip to China, was that because I saw several people getting a deal to China for like $299? Was that the deal you got?
That was the deal I got. Yep.
So let's talk about budget travel, and let's start by talking about that trip to China, because in 2013 I thought I came up because I had a trip. It was a week in China for $888. And everybody was like, "Oh my gosh, you can't even get airfare for that." So yeah, you outdid me.
Unexpectedly. Yes. I can definitely share. So one of the websites I highly recommend for you to check out is called travelzoo.com. So travelzoo.com has every Wednesday, they have their top 20 deal. And even now, I'm still subscribed because I just like to see what's out there. I just want to know what the base price is. So I saw this $299 deal to China. It was a 10-day trip from New York City or anywhere in the country. They had multiple destinations that you could fly out from. They would hook you up with a hotel, 4 or 5-star hotels throughout the entire stay. You had a tour guide, you had transportation, and some activities. I was like, wait. This is a scam.
Yeah.
SCAM. Maybe another M after that. I was like, this is a scam. I was like, you know what? Let me just call them. So I call them and I talk to someone and they were like, "No, it's not a scam, ma'am. Like the Chinese government is supplementing this trip because they want to encourage tourism." So I was like, you know what? That does make sense. That's smart. So I actually signed up, me, my mom, and my husband to go. And my mom and I were on board, but my husband was a surprise trip for him. He had no idea. So Christmas time came around. I'm like, "Surprise, babe, we're going to China." He was like, "Why would you do that to me? Why would you do that to me?" He was not having it at all. We spent the next like 7 months like fighting about going to China, but he eventually was like, "Yes, that's fine. Let's go." The actual trip itself was an amazing experience. However, big asterisk here, it is really tailored for shoppers. So
Yes.
They want to get you in the door so that you can go and shop and take advantage of all the silk, all of the discounts and all of that, which I had no idea. I thought it was just literally a good deal, but it's a good deal with the expectation of you to go and spend a lot of money.
The Chinese government rarely does anything without an ulterior motive. Just saying.
Yes. I was very surprised. I was like, "Oh, this is what we're doing now." Okay.
Because when I found the deal that I found, I went on TripAdvisor, because at the time that was the primary place that I looked for reviews. And there were all these people who kept saying, no, it's legit. Because again, I got it off TravelZoo. I've got some of my best travel deals on TravelZoo. Less so now that I travel solo, because a lot of those tend to be double occupancy. But yeah. So you also wrote a book about affording travel and different strategies. And Was that just because you are a budget traveler, or you're like, I just want to get more bang for my buck?
Well, I would say that I'm a budget conscious traveler. Not that I don't have a budget. It's just I'm really focused on value based spending. So I want to spend on the things that align to me and that I value. So I don't really value flights. So I'm looking for the cheapest flights. And that has become my specialty because I don't really value it that much. But I do value comfortable accommodations. I value like things to do in a destination, all experiential things. So I spend more money on those types of things. And I wrote the book because I realized that there's a lot of people who want to travel, but they have this limiting belief that they cannot afford to travel, or that they feel that travel has to be this like high end luxurious thing that costs so much money that is unattainable for them on a frequent basis. So over the years, I've been able to document my step-by-step strategy of how I do it, from, budgeting, because it all starts with your budget at the end of the day. You really need to understand what's coming in and going out in your finances first, and then now start chipping away at areas where you can start to save. And I think the name of the game primarily is to really make travel a monthly bill for you. So a lot of people think travel is like, oh, it's a nice to have thing. But for me, it's like travel is built into my life, like my gym membership, like my Netflix, like all my electricity, all of the things that I need or I really, really need to survive or want to survive. It's built into your budget, right? So travel is built in just like everything else. And just that alone was a game changer because now I had money saving for travel every single month, and I wasn't necessarily being stressed out when I'm like trying to go on a trip soon or a couple months from now.
It's the idea of having that, anticipating that expense before it even presents itself. Because I sort of restructured my life, and basically everything in my life up until last March revolved around travel. So like that was my primary budget item. And, long as I was putting money for that, then, like I worry about the rest of the stuff when I worry about it.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Okay. Are there areas, and if anybody has a question, I see your question, Kathy. I haven't forgotten you. If anybody's got questions specifically about affordable travel, affording travel, budget travel, that sort of thing, go ahead and drop that in here. Are there areas that you won't travel to because of cost?
I don't think I wouldn't travel there. I would probably try to identify areas where I could close my spending gap. So what I do, like primarily how I save for travel is my financial, like I save cash for travel, but I also do use credit cards as a way to offset some costs. So I may have a budget for travel, but then I have extra points and miles that I could use to maybe have another trip or have a more luxurious experience. So I wouldn't say no. I would try to find a creative way to make it happen. But I'm also pretty like minimalist. So you wouldn't probably see me in the Maldives unless it was a sponsored trip. If I got a press trip, yes.
Well, yeah.
if it was press, yes, sure, I'll take it. But I usually am going against the grain of like the hypes of like places that everyone wants to go to. I'm usually going off the grid or off the map. So I wouldn't say that. Yeah, I think it's hard to say, but I wouldn't say no. I wouldn't say no yet.
I'd like to do Antarctica, but I can't. I don't want to say I can't justify the cost because I understand why it costs what it does. But when I look at that, all I think of how many other places I could go with that money. So
true.
for me, it's like weighing, one trip or like 17.
Many.
So
That's true.
I am coming to terms and making peace with that may be a place that because I firmly believe if there's somewhere I want to go, I'm going to figure out how to get there. But that may be the one place that I would like to go that I don't get to.
So I would actually say that what could help you in that situation is that you can open up a travel fund that's specifically for Antarctica. Okay. And it's separate off. And you can, let's say, okay, when some doesn't have to be like your consistent income like you would for your regular travel fund, but it could be, if I get a tax refund, I could put a portion of that into there. I could, and then maybe in a couple years, you may actually have enough,
Well, because again, I think like a group was doing a tour. They had an opening for a single room, and I was about to click the button, and I looked at that price, and I was like, "But you know how many places you could go for that?" I was like, "That's a lot of places I could go for that money." So that I don't know. That is a different beast to me than oh, where will the money come from? The money is there. I just don't know. Do I want it bad enough to spend that?
And that comes down to your values, right? It could be nice, but it's not nice enough to hit the button, right? One of the apps that I really love that helps me to save a little extra for travel it's called Digit. So Digit. And it just helps you save your spare change. And that would be a perfect account. I would just have Digit working in the background. And then 3 years later, I wake up and whoa, like, the money's there. And you didn't even feel it, right? So I think that's the hard part about saving is that we feel the strain sometimes. Like you're sacrificing today for tomorrow. And like you said, you want to justify going on many trips, not just that one trip. Understandable.
Somebody had a question. Do you recommend a specific card for points and miles?
I recommend quite a few different cards and points for miles. So my strategy this year and maybe a little bit of last year has changed a lot. So I primarily am focusing on no fee credit cards because money is tight all around, right? And I don't want to be spending on fees unless it is going to be advantageous to me to do so. So I would say about 80% of my credit cards now are no fee credit cards because I could still earn points and miles without incurring an annual fee. So I will find the link for you and I'll drop you the list. I have about 5 or 6 credit cards that are no fee that I recommend. Generally speaking, Chase is usually like the go-to for a lot of travelers because they have really good perks. But I would look at Wells Fargo's Propel card. It has like 3 points per mile for a lot of different categories like food, transportation, gas, like things like that, which is what we're spending on right now, right? Mm-hmm. So I'm primarily spending on credit cards that are prioritizing groceries, food, and gas because I'm not really traveling right now. So I don't need that like high travel category. So Propel, the Wells Fargo Propel is one of them that I really do love. And the Chase has 2 different types of free credit cards right now. So Chase Freedom Unlimited is one of them. It also has nice bonus perks. And I really do like it. It's easy. And all the categories we're spending on right now is going to be applicable.
Okay. What do you think is the biggest mistake people make when it comes to travel and finances?
Now, I would say the biggest mistake that people make is that they feel that it's unattainable and they don't have a strategy. So they feel like it's unattainable. So there's no strategy, there's no creativity. For me, finance is all about being creative. It's all about finding a way, finding a hack per se, but gamify your finances to make it fun. One of the things that I struggled with for a long time is just having anxiety looking at my bank account. It's very common to feel that way, having negative feelings about you're going to the ATM and checking your account or even having regular check-ins with your money. So for me, I have a regular money date that I set every week. On Sundays, I sit down, I take a look at my finances, I pay my bills, I do all of that to continuously train my brain that this is not a bad thing. This is actually a really good thing. And once you can start to feel confident about, okay, I know what I'm doing, I know where my money's going, it will help you in all areas of your life, not only to save, but also to even earn too. So I think one of the biggest things that people just fail to do is just take real ownership of their finances, being in control, having regular check-ins with themselves, and using that to funnel to spend on what they really, really want and appreciate.
Yeah, because you see the question all the time. Uh, if you're a member of any travel groups where, people are sharing their pictures or sharing where they went, and somebody will ask, well, how can you afford to travel? And I'm of the same mind as you. Travel doesn't have to be expensive, because for me, it matters that I go. That's what's important to me. So it does not have to be a super luxurious kind of thing. I just want to go. I want to see the stuff. I want to eat the food. Well, some of the food, uh, and experience the culture. So, it's like you said, I get creative and figure out how can I make that happen. Are there areas that, oh, well, what would you say are some awesome, like, budget travel destinations or
Yes.
places where your money can go a little further?
Yes. So one of my favorites, which I was really surprised about, was Lisbon, Portugal. So when you think about Western Europe, like London and the Parises are very expensive, but I found that Lisbon was fairly affordable. The food was really good. You have beaches, you have still hiking and outdoor spaces. And I was just really surprised about the cost. And I actually stayed at hostels the entire time, which was even an added benefit. But even if you didn't, like I thought it was just more affordable. Definitely, I would say Mexico. Mexico was affordable a couple years ago. I don't know. I would love to hear what your thoughts are on that now.
It depends on where you are. If you are wanting to go to the hot spot, which this year has been Tulum, you are going to pay through the nose. As you know, Tulum is, I'm not a big person on beaches. So it wasn't high on my list, but because of the reputation it had for like yoga retreats and that sort of thing, I was like, okay, I'll pass through there. And then I saw some of the prices people were paying, and I was like, y'all, those are not Mexican prices. Like, you might as well be in the US if you're going to pay that kind of money. So it depends on where you go, but you can have a gorgeous beach experience, but you do need to go. I'm not even going to say off the beaten path, but it will be the place that not everybody is posting on IG, this
Mhm.
week or what have you. Like, I was in Cabo in Baja California Sur in December for Christmas and New Year's. And again, I kind of felt like, okay, there are lots of foreigners here. I see why y'all are charging these prices, not places I would normally go.
Yes, yes, yes. I wanted to just quickly add that it really depends on your travel style, right? Because for me, when I was traveling before, I would travel to wherever the deal was taking me, which meant that sometimes the deal took me to the most expensive countries in the world, like the Icelands, like the Norways, like where else did I go to that was pretty expensive? Like those were pretty pricey. Bermuda was another one that was really
Yeah,
expensive.
that one I get you.
Yeah. So when you're chasing the flight deal, then you may run up against these amazing destinations that end up being the most expensive, but that's just going to test your savviness.
Oh,
Your
yeah.
financial That's going to test your financial savviness. So a lot of places that I've been to haven't actually been the cheapest because they weren't like calling me because the cheap flight wasn't there, right? But for me, again, I try to gamify everything. So if I'm going to go to Iceland, how can I save while I'm in Iceland? It's going to be pricey. I get that. But how can I save? That's what I'm really looking for as a financially savvy traveler.
Yeah. Okay. Any other tips for people who want to be financially savvy travelers?
Yeah. So we talked a lot about the saving apps aspect of it. So making sure you actually have cash to go towards your trip. But then there's also the spending aspect, which we started to talk about a little bit, is really making sure that you're able to stretch those savings for one, your experiences that you want to have. So make sure that you're not wasting your money. And two, maybe going on even more trips and even more adventures in the future. So like I mentioned before, like I'm not really big into flights. So I will keep my flight costs low and use that for accommodation or use that for other places and do other things with it. So it's two parts, the saving and also the spending. So make sure, oh, I knew I heard there
I was
was
going to
some,
say, I'm sure y'all heard her.
I hear Jada over here as well. She's like, poking her nose. But yes, so there's two parts. Make sure you're saving, but also make sure that you're using your finances wisely so that you could make the most of your experiences. And one of the things I would recommend is that if you're looking for inspiration for like affordable things to do at destination, one of my favorite hacks is look at Pinterest. So go on Pinterest, because Pinterest is a search engine. So type in like free things to do in Chicago, for example, and you're going to see other bloggers who have written articles about free things to do in Chicago. So then I would actually write out all the free things to do first. So how can I have so much fun for free? And then once I hit that ceiling of all the free things for free, fun things for free, then I start to pay for it. So I always make sure I load up on all the free things first, and then I start hitting the paid things that I really want to do.
That reminded me, I got a flight deal, Black Friday 2017. I got a flight deal to New Zealand. And, one of the first things I do is I Google free walking tour and then free things to do, cheap things to do. Nothing on the list in New Zealand or in Auckland specifically on their like cheap things to do list was less than $30. And I was like, okay,
that's their cheap. That's their cheap.
Yeah, we're going to have to rethink our plan for this destination. I mean, I knew it was going to be pricey, but I did not understand just how pricey. So there was a lot of like wandering around in nature kind of on that trip.
And listen, that's exactly the energy we're bringing into 2021 with the pandemic, is a lot of wandering around, a lot of hiking, a lot of outdoor spaces, a lot of just chilling at home in a new place. That's a lot of it. That's a lot of it too.
That is. We had a question earlier, and I don't know about, let's see, where can I find it? Well, then get down. If you're not going to act right. Airports providing testing prior to returning to the States generally. I can assume this is about COVID testing, of course. I can speak to the fact that most Mexican airports got their stuff together very, very quickly on this. I don't know if they had anticipated this happening. I was a little disappointed that it hadn't occurred already, that it took the United States requiring tests for reentry. But like overnight, we had resorts here and hotels giving free tests. Most of the major airports in Mexico will do that. I don't know about other countries because I haven't left the country since July.
And I have zero experience flying. Zero experience flying.
Oh, yeah, no, I have flown. In July, I left China to come to Mexico. I had 3 flights. That wasn't too bad because at least everybody coming from China was like, they were wearing their masks, they had on their hazmat suits or whatever. Now, I flew back to the United States in October to vote. And I was very nervous because I kept thinking it only takes one fool on this plane to take off their mask and I can get sick or what have you. And then the same thing, like the 2 flights I had here, neither one was more than 2 hours. I don't know if mentally I can handle getting on a plane right now, because the planes themselves are not the problem. What is it? 50% of the air is pulled in from outside. They've got HEPA filters. The planes themselves, it's the human part that you have to anticipate. And the more I see people being resistant to wearing masks and that sort of thing, it's like a group project. I got to depend on other people to keep me alive. That makes me less likely to want to interact with other people.
Yeah, it's unpredictability of human nature, right? Like we just don't know. I literally have walked into Target and all of a sudden started sneezing out of nowhere. I'm like, really? Like what? I'm fine. You could be looking at other people. Meanwhile, you could be acting up. Like it's crazy. It's so crazy. So me and my husband, we already decided we're like, you know what? We're just gonna rule off flying because we primarily to me. Like I'm saying we, like it's him. No, it's me. I'm just like, I think I'm going to be too on edge. So for me, the best thing I can do is just to explore my local area, or, maybe go from like New York to maybe to go to the West Coast or something like that, do a big road trip like that. So I'm really focusing more on being present when I'm traveling right now and less about the destination, right?
Mm-hmm.
So being present with whoever I'm traveling or just experiencing the area and not having to, cross things off a list because there's no list anymore. It doesn't exist. Lists do not exist anymore.
No, because where you can go and what you can do, that is so restricted now, or there's so many things that impact that. So like Kathy had to change her travel in March with that new policy. I had planned, a friend of mine will be working in New Orleans, and I was like, ooh, perfect. I can go, we can hang out for my birthday, all of that. And then I was like, okay, so I have to get a test to come to the US. There's that whole thing because I'm phobic about having to be around other people who want tests, because I assume you want a test because you think you have it.
Could be. Yeah.
So I don't want to be around those people.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just all of the logistics. And then there was the additional change that now that the federal government is requiring masks on flights, that they are going to allow medical exemptions. So I'm just like, I don't think I can deal with that. So I don't anticipate, although I would really like to visit, I don't anticipate flying internationally probably for the rest of this year. Now, you mentioned road trips. We had somebody in the group the other day who asked about, they are taking a road trip. They are going from Pennsylvania to California. Do you have any tips or suggestions?
Yeah, so I would definitely say to map out your trip to try to figure out. It sounds like you're gonna have stops, right? So
Yeah.
where are you gonna stop? Where do you feel safe to stop? What are the precautions at the places that you're going to be stopping at? And trying to see the different spots around that you can actually stop at. It's hard because it's like when you have to use the bathroom, you have to use the bathroom, right? So just making sure that you're self-sufficient, like we had talked about before, packing your own things like your waters, your snacks, your hand sanitizers, your sanitation materials, that kind of thing will be the best thing. And then trying to map it out as best as possible.
Yeah. Because I think about, like, if don't drive across Texas, that'll take you 12 hours just to get across the state. And that's not stopping.
Yeah. And one of the things I actually want to do this summer is I want to do like not RV, like the huge RVs, but they have other smaller classes where it's like it's good for two people or two people and a pet. So I do want to try to see if I can rent out a mobile home because maybe that will be like a good bridge. You have everything with you. All the creature comforts are with you as you travel. So you're again less dependent on having to stop at places. So I think there's options out there for when when you want to do something like that.
Okay. Okay. Does anybody else have any other questions? Affordable travel during the pandemic. I was just thinking, traveling during the pandemic, when I came through the United States, I got, because I did not stay in the United States, I literally landed in San Francisco And then in about 6 hours, I caught a flight to Houston. 9 hours or however many hours after that, I caught a flight to Mexico. And so 2 days after I had originally landed in the US, I was like, my phone was blowing up, all these calls. I answered it. It's a recording where they told me, like, you've come from a highly contagious area. You need
Oh
to
my
quarantine, blah, blah, blah.
gosh.
And at the time, the number of daily infections in China was like 65. And in the United States, it was something like 7,000. And I was like, oh, I need to quarantine.
It's all about perspective, right? It's
It
all about
is.
perspective.
It
It's all about
is.
perspective.
Okay.
Yeah.
It doesn't look like we have any other questions. Have you done a glamping?
I have not done any glamping. I have not done glamping, but I have booked a trip for May and I'm staying at a remote cabin. So it's a cabin in Vermont on a 40-acre forest, inside of a 40-acre forest. So I might literally just like be scared the entire trip, but definitely glamping is on my list. And there's so many different things that you can do now. Hopefully when it gets warmer, there will be a lot of options, but glamping is definitely on my list. Luxurious camping. Yeah.
Yeah. A friend of mine just got back from a glamping trip here in Mexico. And because I don't camp.
Mhm.
That's not my jam. But I don't know. Looking at the pictures, I might consider glamping. We'll
Give
see.
it a
We'll
try,
see.
right? Yeah, just
We'll
give it a
see.
try.
Um, I don't know. Me and nature, we're kind of, sometimes we get along well and sometimes we don't. Well, thank you, Danielle, for popping in and sharing with us your expertise. I have dropped links to two of Danielle's books as well as to her podcast, The Thought Card. Tell us a little bit about The Thought Card.
Sure. So the Thought Card is an affordable travel and personal finance podcast. I love all things money and travel related. So my goal is to inspire you to become more financially savvy traveler, to pay off debt, to build wealth, and to travel the world. And we're going to be back for season 6 coming up on April 1st. So I'm really excited about that. And for this season, we're going to be talking about travel hacking, so more credit card points and miles stuff. Also, location independence and how to become a digital nomad, because this is a hot topic for a lot of us who have 9 to 5s, which is really exciting. And also on the podcast, I also have a 12-part audio docu-series that I co-produce called Millennial Wealth Builders, where we are sharing stories of women of color who are building wealth. So we've had people who have had ability to invest in hotels. How they do that. That's really 2 Black women, very, very inspiring. How to ask for a raise at work. It's just really interesting, just being able to see women of color who are building wealth in different ways. And we definitely have that on the podcast as well.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you, ma'am.
Thank you.
All right.
Thank you. It was awesome hanging out.
Good night, everybody.